Hey mom, what's the feminism?
Honey, we don't say this word in our house. It's a horrible term invented by men, прости господи, to make women work, pay taxes, and sometimes even split bills.
Bună seara din Chișinău. Greetings from Chișinău, and that is an absolutely hilarious take by a comedian, Tori Lover. But there's a lot of truth, even if it is put in a very humoristic way. And in today's video, we're going to be exploring why Eastern European women hate Western feminism, they hate radical feminism. It is not a big thing here, as you're going to find out. So let's get into it. Поехали.
SAR Experience.
So I've had clients before that have told me horror stories about trying to be, I guess, what could be described as chivalrous in the West. Like I had a client from Denmark previously and told me a story about how once he sent a girl flowers in Denmark and she returned them to him, said, "Those tricks won't work with me." Well, I can guarantee you that has never happened in the history of Eastern Europe that a woman has sent flowers back. They love flowers here. It's actually a really strong part of the culture. Also had another client who's from Canada who told me that, and I think it's a story a lot of guys actually have told me over the years from different Western countries where they're going somewhere and they see someone behind them and they keep the door open for them, which is courteous and proper manners, and then they have some feminazi looking woman bang through the door as if, "Hey, why are you holding the door open for me? I can do everything myself," when they probably would have presumably also held the door open for a man. Again, those things like being a gentleman are more valued here by women, for sure. You're going to see that if you ever go out on a date. There's a little bit more of the old school ceremony about it. Taking the lady's coat. See, I even used the word lady. I slipped into it a little bit, but yeah, you take your date's coat, hang it up on a hanger. You may even hold the seat out for her. And you are definitely paying the bill because you are the man with the plan in Eastern Europe, and there's no such thing as going Dutch, as I've said. So in many videos here, that is not a thing in Eastern Europe. If you're out on a date, you are the guy who plans everything, who organizes, and obviously then you get to choose, which is part of the reason why you're the one paying the bill, since you're the one making the decisions. So be the nastoyashi mujik, the real man, as is the expression here, and don't worry about those things, the horror stories that a lot of guys endure in the West in terms of radical feminism. Not a big thing here, not popular, and not likely to become popular in the near future. So behind me there you got some traditional religious iconography, and that is a segue into my big caveat, which is don't fall for the marketing scam that is that Eastern European women are traditional necessarily. They are different and they have a different history and different set of social norms, I would say. But, for example, here in Eastern Europe, the divorce rate is super high. It's actually higher than in the West in general. Virginity rate is low. Fertility rate is super low. And you have the widespread phenomenon as a result of that of single moms here in Eastern Europe. You could call it a pandemic of single moms. I'm not saying that any of these things, whether traditional or not, are good or bad. I'm just pointing out that they're not traditional, and you need to be careful not to fall for that kind of positioning that they're some sort of unadulterated, perfect, unspoiled, untainted women here in Eastern Europe. They still are women, and hypergamy is what tends to rule in sexual dynamics. So hypergamy, if you don't know, is the trend of women to marry or mate across and up on socioeconomic hierarchies. So that is something that we see also in the West, but here it's actually even a little bit more pronounced, I would say, because, well, women have less of a tendency to be emancipated and try and achieve higher socioeconomic status themselves on average than you're going to see in the West. So definitely don't believe that you're going to come here and it's just going to be a panacea because the radical feminists aren't here and the panacea is just to come to Eastern Europe. Not at all. You need to be cognizant of the different cultural nuances here in Eastern Europe. In general, definitely they're not looking for Western or radical feminism, but at the same time, don't forget the basics that are, hypergamy and the other regional tendencies, like a super high divorce rate. And especially if you're going to take a woman from here back to the West, you want to be very cognizant of that, because you're taking a woman from a society where divorce is super high, and perhaps the socioeconomic benefit was being with a Western guy. To get to the West, obviously, with Ukrainians, that's less of a risk now because they can actually go on their own to the West. They don't need necessarily to marry to do that. But definitely beware if you're going to change the dynamics, because when you get to the West, you're going to have what I like to call a value gap. I have another video on that. I'll link it up above and down below, where if a guy was, say, on the dating market, his sexual market value was, say, back home a 5, he comes to Eastern Europe, maybe he's even willing to take a single mom, and he gets, say, a 7 here, brings her back to his maybe rural town in the US, and suddenly he's back down to a 5, and the woman looks, like a 9 there, because us guys, we are more interested in women for their aesthetics, their looks, more than women are in men, for biological reasons, and as a result, you got a massive value gap. And yeah, quite often it doesn't end well. I actually have a client who told me that would have been late 90s, he was in Canada, and he was in a group who had married Eastern European women, Canadian men, and 80% of the relationships ended within a couple of years once they got to Canada, and the woman actually had residency rights. And that was women who had met naturally, just coming here. The Canadian guys had met the women here in Eastern Europe, or they had met them via some sort of matchmaker or dating site. It was kind of the same phenomenon. Hypergamy is what hypergamy tends to be. So just beware of that and you'll do fine. So as Tori points out there in more humoristic terms, Eastern European women in general are not looking to split the bill. Going Dutch is not a thing here. They are more interested in focusing on their family than their career in general than you're going to find in the West. And definitely they are up for being approached by men. There's none of this radical feminist shaming about men approaching women. In fact, they are very much in favor of that, and you must be assertive and lead as a man in Eastern Europe, even more than in the West. They have an expression, nastoящий mujik, a real man. That is very important to adhere to in order to be successful in Eastern Europe with dating. If you're not nastoящий mujik here, it will probably end very poorly for you. And yeah, do I have anything else to say on this point? No, I just let the other lady speak from Eastern Europe, and you can hear it straight from the horse's mouth. What do you think of feminism in the West?
In the West?
Or feminism here? Is there feminism in Ukraine?
I feel fine about it. I feel like, of course, that like you should be much nicer to women and like to give, like, for example, rights to be like, some like leader or directors of somewhere, or like to have the same salaries. But sometimes it's getting like too much.
Я просто хорошо отношусь к тому, когда за меня платят в заведениях, открывают двери в ресторан, действительно, да. То есть я считаю это нормально, если вы живете там в семье. Да, дарят цветы. Мужчина, когда зарабатывает больше, это нормально.
Феминизм – это право выбора каждого человека делать то, что он хочет. Если раньше у женщин были сильно меньше права, они не могли выбирать, пойдут ли они учиться, пойдут ли они работать, то сейчас, благодаря течению феминизма, мы сами можем выбирать, идти нам учиться, идти нам работать. Мы также можем выбрать не идти работать и сидеть дома. Все зависит от тебя, а не от того, как тебе скажет твой муж, например.
Radical feminism. Of course, you should be nicer, you should like be more understandable, but not critical.
not man-hating. I think that's what you're trying to express.
Women's amazing, men's is amazing, all the human being is amazing.
Я думаю, он у нас только на нулевом уровне, феминизм в Украине, и, возможно, в будущем у нас будет намного больше девушек и женщин феминисток. Но на данный момент, я думаю, их 1% со 100. Ну, конечно, я против радикального феминизма, но если девушка немножко феминистка, это тоже неплохо.
Что это немножко феминистка?
Это где нужно.
So if you are looking for a high-octane weekend, an unforgettable weekend in Eastern Europe, without the scourge of radical feminism to ruin your trip, then what are you doing next weekend? Because it could be you, like it was with my clients who've been recently with me here in Chisinau in Moldova. We could be spending an absolutely phenomenal weekend living the Zara experience in a city in Eastern Europe. I've been recently also to Kazakhstan, to Almaty. I'm making this video in late December, or I'm filming this clip at least in late December 2022, the year of the Russo-Ukrainian war became more expanded, and I'm not recommending that guys go currently to Ukraine, Russia, or Belarus, but there are lots of other options in Eastern Europe. Also going to go to Latvia, to Riga, the capital, with a client in a couple of weeks, and then probably back to Kazakhstan. So down below, there is a link to apply for the Zara experience. It is by application only. It's not for everybody. And I also have a playlist, link it up above in the card down below, also in the description for you, so that you should check out first. Got a few videos there in the cities that I've gone to previously with the Zara experience, so like cities in Ukraine and Belarus and Russia that we're not going to go to right now, but maybe you're also watching this in the future, and it's again possible to go back to some of those cities. And in the meantime, I'll be adding to that playlist constantly the new cities that I go to and document, like here in Chisinau, already got a vlog for that, also Almaty in Kazakhstan, and be adding to that pretty soon. So go check out all of that stuff before you apply for the Zara experience, so you have a better idea whether it is a good idea for you to apply, and if works out, could be you enjoying an unforgettable weekend here with me on the Zara experience in Eastern Europe. So with that said, la revedere, goodbye from the capital of Moldova, Chisinau. До свидания.
Zara Experience.